Grinding. What is grinding? Why is grinding becoming such a large part of video games, and what does a long journey to accomplish and achieve really contribute to a video game? And can grinds be for the better? When you're ready, grab your cup of tea, sit back, relax, and enjoy. Grinding is the act of doing one thing over and over until you either get bored or achieve your goals. It's a deciding factor when considering if a game is fun or not. I usually quit a game once it starts to feel like a grind because when I play video games, I want to either relax or entertain myself. But is that grindy feeling a result of the game being too grindy, or is it because you feel like it's too grindy? I personally believe that almost every game can be seen as a grindy game, especially if there are repetitive actions or experience gaining modules in that game. But it's the state of mind that can turn those repetitive actions or that long journey into a grinding feeling. Calling a game grindy is mostly subjective and down to opinion, considering that if you were having fun, you wouldn't be so quick in calling it a grind. Perhaps you might enjoy getting max prestige in Call of Duty while someone else despises the act of going beyond prestige 1. So why is grinding such a common feature of many modern video games? Despite grinds being subjective, it is a common feature of many modern games, and even older games as well. What motives do these game designers have to create seemingly lengthened content? Well, the first and most obvious reason is really quite simple. Gamers over the past decade have simply become more and more demanding of content, or better said, value for their money. When they buy a game for a full €60, they want to buy into a gaming experience that will provide them with a large amount of entertaining hours. So many hours, in fact, that the cost per hour would go into the single-digit cents per hour, meaning over 600 hours of playtime. Designing a regular game with a campaign to last this long is almost impossible without some sort of grindy content. For a second, try to imagine any campaign game with a decent story that you have played for over 600 hours in a single campaign save. Even games like The Witcher or games from the Elder Scrolls series don't go over these numbers. That being said, there are clearly players with many more hours in these games, but you get my point. To meet the demand of players, game designers must put some form of grindy content in their games. In Call of Duty, it's the prestige system. In For Honor, it's reputation, which is almost the same thing, and in many other games you can receive special cosmetics or achievements for replaying a game in a certain way. The only other way to make a game last longer than normal is to create a video game with endless creativity options like Minecraft or Planet Coaster. Or just make an endless MMO and get people to pay a monthly subscription, because that also works. Funnily enough, I don't even mind it at all. For me as a regular consumer, this just means a lot of the games I buy will have a lot of replayability than a game from 20 years ago. Where if you already know it all, replaying the game will end up feeling like a grind because it's the exact same thing over and over again with absolutely no change. The second reason game developers put grind into games, more specifically tedious grinds, is obviously to sell microtransactions and to make more money. Who would have guessed companies want to literally suck the bills out of your wallet? What a surprise. One example is when Battlefield 3 introduced shortcut kits, letting you buy all the unlocks without actually having to play the game. Now, it wouldn't take a rocket scientist to figure out how to ramp up those sales. Simply make the in-game grind slightly more annoying and you'll probably get 10% more revenue. We all know that this trend continued into other Battlefield games, and loot boxes also popped up, giving XP boosts and so on. The second example is For Honor, which is a Ubisoft game for your information, so you already know what to expect. For Honor's main currency is used to buy cosmetics, better gear, and character unlocks. This currency is called steel. Now, pretty much everything that costs steel in this game is ridiculously expensive if you look at how little you actually gain per match. It's disgusting game design in my opinion. In addition to that, you need to play a ridiculous amount before you can change the color of your leather or metal on a single character in For Honor. Don't worry though, as the game has you covered. If you spend money on steel, you can get yourself champion status for 40% extra experience on every character. Lol. The only plus side is that it doesn't really feel like a grind because you need a lot of time, which is quite fun, to master a single character anyway due to the steep learning curve of this game. World of Tanks is another great example. Grinding out tanks up to tier 10, which is the top tier, can take a huge amount of time. And what's even worse is you can run out of credits, the basic currency of the game, if you're incredibly bad at the game by playing too many matches with a higher tier tank without winning because they're expensive to use. So what did the developers of World of Tanks do? Well, they added a subscription model called Premium that would not only decrease the amount of time it took you to unlock new tanks, but it would also give you extra credits from matches, making it even more attractive to the player. If that wasn't enough, you could also buy a special tank that makes you more credits than a normal tank, being called a premium tank, which by the way are pretty expensive and can go up to a almost full price of a new AAA game. On top of that, they even had time-limited grind events that were near impossible to beat or finish unless you played 8 hours a day, solid, for 2 weeks. But let's say you only played 6 hours a day and you almost got to the final stage of that grind event to get a special premium vehicle. What can you do to make those hours not feel wasted? Well, you can pay up a little and still get that tank. Seriously, that is unbelievably toxic game design and should never be accepted. Thankfully, many large content creators from World of Tanks have addressed their concern plenty of times. By the way, they also have Christmas loot boxes, which is even more MTX, which reminds me of the atrocity of a Battlefront 2. Something quite funny to think about is that mobile games do the exact opposite thing to get you to pay up. If you want to grind in many mobile games, you have to pay to get extra lives, battery charge, and so on to keep doing matches or levels. Basically anti-grinding. Pretty interesting to think about, I thought I'd say that. So what effect does grinding have? Because a grinding game isn't inherently bad. There can be plus sides to having prolonged content in a video game, but it isn't necessarily all good either. In fact, I think sometimes prolonged gameplay can really destroy your fun per hour ratio, and if that wasn't a real term, it now is. I use this term to compare other games when I talk to my online friends from the game I primarily make content on, being Runescape 3, which, if you didn't know, is an MMO, and MMOs are always grindy games, but I think RuneScape is the grindiest of them all. The fun per hour ratio of RuneScape compared to me playing another game is extremely low, with some exceptions of intense moments during PvM. That is the case because per hour played, the progression in RuneScape is just dreadfully slow. To give an example of how long things can take in RuneScape, it would take you up to 1000 hours to get ready to fight the Ender Dragon. I'm aware that's a stupid comparison, but I hope you get what I mean. It takes a lot of time to get anywhere near the true fun stuff of RuneScape unless you're a fan of grinding itself or the quests in the game, which by the way are much more accessible. You can virtually skill forever in RuneScape and you could kill every boss 1,000 times and there still would be so much content for you to do. This game is so ridiculously expansive that every time something is updated, something else, or then possibly forgotten, breaks. Now I say the fun per hour ratio is low, yet I think the game is a lot of fun. That's pretty weird, right? The game is fun because you can socialize, and that is an important factor that keeps many players playing and grinding away for hundreds and thousands of hours. But just like any game that sucks up way too much time, this has a very negative effect. If you spend a lot of time on something, you cannot simply throw it away because you get attached to that thing. And this is a problem many players of this game aren't willing to accept. I've seen some rare exceptions where players completely cut out their account and have it deactivated to leave the game for good. This is where the saying "you can never quit RuneScape" comes from. You take a break, whether it's 1 month or 3 years, and then you come back and get into the game again and again. Now, something that isn't grindy can still be addictive, but the more hours you put into something, the harder it is to let go. There's something about RuneScape's design with completion logs, experience milestones, achievements, and even bragging rights to other players that keeps players grinding away and interested in the game. It's great for the company because there is also MTX, aka microtransactions in the game, making grind shorter, but just playing too long and having things matter so much is terrible for the individual player. The effect of grinding too long or playing video games for absurd amounts of hours is destructive to your body and health. Weirdly enough, I think many of these players are aware of this but are simply not willing to let go because they are addicted to this game. I generally feel like addiction is a negative downside of a game being too good at being grindy. With all of that being said, obviously not every player that plays RuneScape is addicted to it. One looked over thing with grinding is that it does teach you something real, and that is getting something takes a lot of work. It teaches you that you just can't satisfy your wants and needs instantly. You will have to work for it. This is something I've taken from playing RuneScape as well. If you want something, you'll have to put in the work. Just like working out, which I also do, you have to put in hard work before you can get remotely close to where you want to be. This applies to most things in real life as well. The only difference is that with grinding in video games, you aren't really progressing. It's more like fake or virtual progression. Because you aren't progressing in life, you aren't learning a new skill, you're just getting better and better at the same tasks you do. And you know what? As long as you're enjoying yourself, it doesn't matter. You do not need to progress to bettering yourself 24/7. No one, literally no one, can be that productive. So spending some extra hours playing video games is just a different way of spending your free time. Sometimes grinding can even make you more impactful in team-based games, and that can give you an emotional boost, which perhaps would be much harder to get in real life, but don't let that take away from that moment. So to wrap it up, games are becoming grindier than ever to get people to play for longer and to get them to spend more money. If a game is awful and overly grindy, it's probably there to make a game feel like there's more to it, while there really isn't. On the other hand, if it's fantastic, then enjoy it. Enjoy the journey, embrace the stretch progression because it is fun. And if you feel like it isn't fun and you can't get yourself to stop, force yourself out of that endless loop to try and find something you do find fun. I really think it's important to take a step back and ask yourself if you really enjoy a certain grind and if it's worth it for you. Because there are way too many games nowadays that are designed to pull you into that loop to constantly keep you playing. With that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed this video and found it interesting. If you did, feel free to share your thoughts down below and leave a like if you enjoyed. Peace.